Hi, and welcome to the mini lesson on how to write an engaging lead or hook, which means the very first sentence of your writing, your story, using the acronym PADIQ. Our objectives are to define each letter for the acronym PADIQ, and then to identify different hooks or leads using each one of these letters. It is so important that whatever you are writing, that very first line, is engaging and interesting, because that is the first chance the reader has to decide if he or she wants to keep reading. It's critical that that opening sentence and paragraph catch the reader immediately. Look at our little fish and hook icon down here. This is an example or a metaphor for what you're trying to do in your paper. The reader is the fish, and your actual first line and paragraph are that little worm on the hook. You want to catch the reader just like the catch to the hook is trying to catch the fish. It's also called a lead because this first sentence is leading you into your writing. So here's our acronym PADIQ. P stands for picture, A stands for action, D for dialogue, I for interesting fact, and Q for question. We're going to go through each one of these and read some examples and talk more about them. Let's look at this opening paragraph of Ink and Ashes. P stands for picture. In this type of lead, you want to use imagery that creates a vivid picture in the reader's mind. Remember, imagery is words that appeal to the five senses, and the purpose of it is to help create that picture. As I read this little opening, see if you can get this picture in your mind. I stared at my pink walls, wishing away the smell of death. Jasmine incense, used at every funeral I had ever attended, hovered in the air. I imagined the wispy smoke snaking its way through the narrow spaces around my closed door, the tendrils prying at tucked-away memories. Did you get a picture in your mind? Could you see the pink walls? What about smell the incense in the air? And seeing the smoke from the incense coming through the edges of the door and underneath. This is P for picture. A stands for action. In this lead or hook, the author begins with an action. Let's look at the first line of Avi's School for the Dead. The first time Uncle Charlie came to live with us, he was alive. The second time he came, he was dead. All right, so we're starting with an action. Uncle Charlie coming to live with us 2 different times, one alive, one dead. D stands for dialogue. In this type of lead or hook, you are actually going to start with people's conversations. Let's look at what the opening sentences of Found are. You don't look much like your sister, Chip said, bouncing the basketball low against the driveway. I want you to take a special notice of the quotation marks here and here. That shows us that these are the actual words that Chip is saying. When you start with D for dialogue, you must use those quotation marks. I stands for interesting fact. Read the opening sentences here of Trials of Apollo, and let's see the interesting fact he begins with. My name is Apollo. I used to be a god. In my 4,612 years, I've done many things. I inflicted a plague on the Greeks who besieged Troy. I blessed Babe Ruth 3 home runs in Game 4 of the 1926 World Series. I visited my wrath upon Britney Spears at the 2007 MTV Video Music Awards. But in all my immortal life, I never crash-landed in a dumpster. All right, so our interesting fact here is that he used to be a god. That's definitely something unusual and not what you usually hear every day. He then goes on to list several other interesting facts, inflicting a plague on the Greeks, giving Babe Ruth 3 home runs, and messing up Britney Spears at the MTV Video Music Awards. Not what most people do in a day. Q stands for question. Let's look at the opening lines of the 4th stall. You need something? I can get it for you. You have a problem? I can solve it. Here it's very evident to see that you're opening with a question. Now I want to caution you. because Q for question is probably the easiest type of lead or hook to use, but it's also the most overused because it's so easy. If you choose to use Q for question, you really need to make sure your question is interesting and not just a boring, regular, everyday question like, hey, do you like ice cream? Because pretty much everybody likes ice cream. So you're going for something here that is going to spark an unusual answer. All right, so now we're going to try together. We're going to practice. The opening paragraph here from Messenger of Fear is going to use one of the letters in the acronym PADIQ. I want you to read it silently as I read it out loud, and then think about which letter of the acronym is being used. My eyes opened. I was on my back. A mist pressed close all around me, so close that it was more like a blanket than a fog. The mist was the color of yellowed teeth, and it moved without a breath of breeze, moved as if it had a will. All right, what do you think? Take a minute. Do you think it's P for picture, A for action, D for dialogue, I for interesting fact, or Q for question? If you guessed A for action, you were right because he says his eyes opened, and he is on his back. But did anybody also think P for picture? The mist pressed close all around me so that it was more like a blanket than a fog. The mist was the color of yellowed teeth. Wow, that's a definite image that I get in my mind. Yellowed teeth, that's disgusting. So actually, this opening is kind of a combination. P for picture and A for action. And you'll find that a lot of times your leads can be combinations. How about this one? This is the very beginning of Gregor the Overlander. Look at your acronym at the top to help you decide. Gregor had pressed his forehead against the screen for so long, he could feel a pattern of tiny checks above his eyebrows. He ran his fingers over the bumps and resisted the impulse to let out a primal caveman scream. If you thought A for action, you got it. He's pressing his forehead against the screen, and then he wants to run his fingers over the bumps. All right, here's another one. This is from the Zombie Chasers. Dusk settled over the neighborhood. The humid air was thick as pulp. All right, how about P for picture? Dusk is the time of day right before the sun goes down. So that means it's getting dark in the neighborhood. The air was humid and thick as pulp. Pulp is what happens to wood when you mash it up, like you're getting ready to make paper. How about this one? This is from Small as an Elephant. Elephants can sense danger. They're able to detect an approaching tsunami or earthquake before it hits. Unfortunately, Jack did not have this talent. The day his life was turned completely upside down, he was caught unaware. All right, look at your acronym. PADIQ, which one do you think it is? Did you get I for interesting fact? Elephants can sense danger. That's definitely unusual. They're able to detect an approaching tsunami or earthquake before it hits. This is definitely an interesting fact. How about this one? This is from Pegasus, Flame of Olympus. Emily put her hand on the window and felt the glass shaking from the heavy peals of thunder cracking overhead. Did you get A for action? Also notice the use of onomatopoeia with the word cracking. Here's another one. This is from The Breadwinner. I can read that letter as well as Father can. Parvana whispered into the folds of her chador. Well, almost. This one is sort of a combination again. Did you think A for action, because she's saying she can read it, but also did you notice the quotation marks? D for dialogue. This is actually what she's saying, the exact words of a conversation, and we know that because of the question marks. So it is D for dialogue. Try this one. This is from Cinder. The screw through Cinder's ankle had rusted, the engraved cross marks worn to a mangled circle. Her knuckles ached from forcing the screwdriver into the joint as she struggled to loosen the screw, one gritting twist after another. How about P for picture? The screw is kind of like a nail, but it has the edges that are chiseled out, and you use it with a screwdriver to twist into things to hold them together. So this is saying that she has a screw in her ankle and that it's rusted, which means that it's hard to turn and loosen. Her knuckles are aching from the force of the screwdriver in the joint. That would be here. So she has a screw here in her ankle. Her joint is aching from it, and she's trying to loosen it. You might have also gotten A for action, but definitely we get a picture here as well. Last one, from Kimchi and Calamari. You wake up and you're 14. The world is your supersized soda waiting to be guzzled, right? Wrong. My birthday tasted more like Coke that went flat. Okay, what'd you get on this one? You could have thought action for the very first sentence because it says you're waking up. But then look at the second sentence. The world is your supersized soda waiting to be guzzled, right? That could also be question. So again, maybe a combination, but definitely a question in the beginning. So let's look at the acronym one more time. P for picture, A for action, D for dialogue, I for interesting fact, and Q for question. This acronym is a great way for you to have at your fingertips ideas for starting any type of story you're getting ready to write, whether it be a fictional short story, a personal narrative, maybe even some of these can be used to lead into a nonfiction piece. Probably you need to memorize it. P for picture, A for action, D for dialogue, I for interesting fact, and Q for question. There you go. That's been your mini lesson on PADIQ. Hope it helped.